Uno. Y empezamos. Proyecto Acuática está en vivo ahora y no con cualquier evento, sino con la Convención de Tiburones 2025, cuarta versión. Un evento especial donde las nuevas generaciones y los científicos se unen para defender la imagen de los tiburones y desmentir todo lo malo que dicen de ellos, especialmente desde hace 50 años, con el estreno de la película Jaws en el año 1975. En este evento quiero que tratemos un tema urgente, tanto para los tiburones como en general, que es la sobrepesca y el manejo sostenible de especies claves. ¿Tú qué piensas sobre eso, Mimi?
Así es, Gabriela. ¿Sabían que más del 30% de los tiburones están en peligro de extinguirse? Y si desaparecen, el equilibrio del océano también corre peligro. Por eso, esta convención existe para aprender, preguntar y actuar.
Antes de seguir con esta bella convención, cabe decir que esta versión de la Convención de Tiburones es en colaboración con Saving Our Sharks y Desmitificando Tiburones, además de ser parte de la agenda del Mes Nacional del Tiburón, mes que ambas organizaciones aprovechan para concientizar a las personas sobre el valor de los tiburones. Así que adelante, Brenda.
Ay, pues nada más quiero decirte que es un honor para mí estar aquí de parte de Desmitificando Tiburones haciendo esto posible. Nos enorgullece demasiado que hayamos podido hacer esta alianza contigo. Me toca comentar que esta es la 10ª ocasión que Saving Our Sharks realiza el mes de tiburón en el estado de Quintana Roo, pero ahora ya se eleva a nivel nacional y con ustedes pues ya a nivel internacional. Así que es un súper honor. Desmitificando tiburones rapidito, somos un grupo de amigos que buceamos. Yo no soy bióloga, somos entusiastas del mar y amantes del mar, conservacionistas, y en un buceo, en un viaje de buceo que nos topamos a muchos tiburones, dijimos qué podemos hacer para cuidar esta especie, porque cuidar al tiburón no nada más es cuidar el ecosistema, no nada más es cuidar al mar, sino cuidarnos a nosotros mismos. Entonces así nace Desmitificando Tiburones. No estamos en campo, pero hacemos alianzas con asociaciones que sí están en campo, como Saving Our Sharks, que ellos están en Playa del Carmen, y tienen mucho apoyo de comunidades pesqueras, de biólogos que están ahí, se hacen marcajes, se hacen seguimientos de las rutas de los tiburones, recibimos al tiburón ballena, al tiburón toro, y pues se nos hizo padre agregarlos. Tuve la oportunidad de conocer a Gaby y trabajar en conjunto. Y ahorita pues fue así un no-brainer de decir, vamos a unir alianzas, vamos a juntarnos, vamos a agregar a Proyecto Acuática en la agenda de Saving Our Sharks para el mes del tiburón. Y estamos muy honrados de que estas nuevas generaciones sigan queriendo transmitir el mensaje de lo que realmente es un tiburón. Entonces, muchísimas gracias, Gaby, por invitarnos y por darnos la oportunidad de estar aquí.
Bueno, Brenda, muchas gracias por tus palabras, porque la verdad, algo que yo me he dado cuenta a través de los años es que es importante que existe un trabajo en equipo para la conservación marina. Y es muy bonito que se den esta clase de espacios mencionando la colaboración entre Desmitificando y Proyecto Acuática, como también mencionando la Convención de Tiburones, para que los niños tengan una voz y que vean que no simplemente son niños que se la pasan jugando todo el rato, sino que también pueden tener ese compromiso o por lo menos tener ese sentido de protección con el océano y en este caso de una bella especie como lo son los tiburones. Entonces, muchas gracias y qué lindo recordar ahora el dato que nos dijo Mimi. Más del 30% de los tiburones están en peligro de extinguirse. Así que vamos a dar la bienvenida a dos invitados muy especiales con muchos años trabajando por la conservación de los tiburones. Cuéntanos sobre uno de ellos, Mimi. ¿A quién tenemos con nosotros?
Primero, Melanie Villate, bióloga colombiana que ha hecho el Pacífico su casa y desde allí lidera ciencia con propósito junto a pescadores y comunidades. Durante sus estudios de doctorado, Se enfocó en el uso de herramientas genéticas para tener un mayor conocimiento de los tiburones del Pacífico colombiano y así generar mejores planes de manejo en la región. Ella es la fundadora de Mar Adentro, que nace de la idea de usar la exploración científica para cuidar el mar, involucrando a la comunidad local en su protección. Actualmente se encuentra llevando a cabo el monitoreo de tiburón ballena en la zona, para ayudar a mejorar su protección.
Y entre nosotros también tenemos a César Peña Herrera, biólogo marino ecuatoriano especializado en ciencias marinas cuantitativas, con más de 15 años de experiencia, liderando proyectos en ecología del comportamiento, ecología poblacional, ecología trófica, estoy notando mucha ecología, bioeconomía también, ciencias sociales, pero más que nada con el fin de mejorar el conocimiento sobre el estado pues, de conservación de las especies marinas migratorias, sobre todo de las mogranquios. Pero espérate, ¿qué son el asmobranquios? Tiburones y rayas.
Hola, hola con todos. Muchas
Gracias
gracias
a,
por la... Ay, perdón. Ay, lo siento, Mini. Pensé que me tocaba.
Dale, Mimi, di lo que ibas a decir.
gracias a ambos por estar aquí y por inspirarnos con su trabajo.
Bueno, ¿qué tienen los especialistas que decir por el momento?
César, dale.
No, no, no. Por Melanie, continúe usted.
Le
Muchas
ganó la
gracias por la
vergüenza.
invitación y es muy lindo poder estar acá, poder compartir lo que hacemos. Creo que haya tantas personas como de las nuevas generaciones que estén interesados en los tiburones, porque sabemos que cuando terminemos nuestro trabajo todo va a quedar en buenas manos también.
Muy bien, César, ¿se te pasó la vergüenza?
No, todavía. Estoy barajando mis cartas de tiburones para pasar.
Mira.
Gracias, no, gracias en serio por la oportunidad de estar aquí. A la jefa Mimi, me avisa cuando tenga que hablar, por favor, la próxima. Lanza un
Ok.
lapicito ahí.
No, yo te
Este,
aviso, yo te aviso.
sí, pero muchas gracias en serio la oportunidad de estar aquí y ver no solo a Gaby, que ya la he visto algunas veces con todas estas ganas y estas energías, pero conocer a nueva gente y sobre todo en mi país, como que es Catherine y Mimi también, que están tratando de ver, de emocionar y de impulsar este cambio, este switch de on-off, ese cambio de imagen que tienen los tiburones de ser unos depredadores salvajes a realmente partes importantes del ecosistema que tenemos, ¿no? Entonces, eso me parece bonito.
Muy bien. Ahora, la jefa te ordena que te calles. No, mentira. Ya, ahora sí. Profesionalmente, vamos a empezar con la presentación de no tiburones, tiburonas junior, porque aquí veo como un poder femenino. Estas tiburonas junior han participado en las sesiones de preparación y hoy traen sus preguntas o reflexiones.
Viajando a Ecuador para empezar con Ekaterín, también conocida como Sharky Gris, un amante total del tiburón de puntas plateadas, un depredador audaz, valiente, feroz y sobre todo tranquilo. Adelante, Caterín.
Bueno, Catherine.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Ekaterina Hernández y bueno, es un honor estar aquí hoy con ustedes. La verdad, estoy muy feliz y contenta de poder tener esta oportunidad de convivir con ustedes y muchas gracias y espero poder aprender mucho más sobre ustedes.
Bueno, cabe decir que Catherine tiene una presentación sorpresa que ella me compartió hace unos días, que la verdad, debo decirles, es muy preciosa, así que vamos a compartirla con ustedes para sorprender a nuestros especialistas también. Así que vamos a compartir pantalla y les vamos a mostrar qué tiene esta tiburona junior para nosotros. Bueno, me avisan cuando pues se puedan ver la pantalla, las diapositivas.
Ya, ahí se pueden ver.
Perfecto. Vamos a aumentar para que se vea mejor. Y listo. ¿Ya se ve? Bueno. Catherine, el escenario es tuyo.
Bueno, hola a todos otra vez. Bueno, hoy quiero contarles sobre un tiburón muy especial con un nombre que parece un trabalenguas. El tiburón pinta roja, colilarga ocelado. Este pequeño tiburón vive relajado en los arrecifes de coral del norte de Australia. Aunque no mide más de 1 metro, es fácil de reconocer por su cuerpo marrón lleno de manchas oscuras y 2 grandes ocelos detrás de las aletas, como si llevara lentes detrás de la espalda para despistar a sus enemigos. Pero lo más divertido y curioso de este tiburón es que camina. Sí, usa sus aletas como si fueran patitas para pasearse por el fondo del mar, como si dijera, yo no nado, yo paseo. Se alimenta de peces e invertebrados pequeños y pone huevos porque es ovíparo. Es súper tranquilo, no se muda de arrecife y está clasificado como especie de preocupación menor. Este tiburón demuestra que no hace falta ser enorme ni feroz para tener papel importante en el océano. Los pequeños también tienen su magia. Gracias.
Bueno, aquí tenemos pues la presentación de Caterine. ¿Qué les parece a los especialistas? ¿Qué tal?
Me parece particular porque escogiste un tiburón que no tiene toda esa fama que normalmente tiene, ¿cierto? Que hay unos que son súper reconocidos, que todo el mundo sabe cuáles son, que son grandes, que son los típicos tiburones, y la magia está en todas partes en estas especies. Entonces creo que eso es lo más lindo, darte cuenta que hay unos que son increíbles y pueden medir 7 centímetros o pueden vivir en sitios donde uno no se espera o pueden tener características que uno no se imagina que tienen los tiburones. Y como descubrir todas esas pequeñas partes es creo que parte de la magia de descubrir los tiburones.
César.
Güey, un tiburón que camina. A ver, empecemos por ahí, tengan la bondad. Todos conocemos, como bien dijo Melanie, muchos tiburones los tenemos en la mente, aquellos que son grandes, con dientes y que tienen esa apariencia feroz, ¿no? Pero, wow, qué lindo ejemplo que nos trae ahorita de Catherine, precisamente de una especie que es todo lo contrario y aún así es tiburón. Es un individuo muy chiquito y frágil porque son pequeños realmente y que tienen una particularidad que no la tienen el resto de tiburones, o sea, que demuestra esta gran diversidad de especies que hay en el asmobranquios a nivel mundial. Un tiburón que camina.
Bueno, ahora vamos a bucear un poquito más, porque vamos a pasar de las... bueno, Ekaterín, ¿tienes alguna pregunta para los especialistas?
No, quisiera hacerlo al final junto con Mimi y contigo.
Bueno, perfecto. Entonces, pues para que Mimi se presente, porque sí, vamos a nadar de aguas ecuatorianas a las españolas. Pues bueno, María Ortiz, también conocida como Mimi, ella es la fan número 1 de los tiburones blancos, la especie más malentendida, pero a su parecer la más hermosa. Mimi.
Muchas gracias, Gabriela. Yo tengo una pregunta para Melanie y César. ¿Qué consejos darían a jóvenes que quieren seguir sus pasos en la ciencia o en la conservación?
Yo creo que hay algo muy importante, no sé si César le pasó eso, pero yo creo que en general todos los que, sobre todo, bueno, tampoco sé cómo sea en Ecuador, pero creo que sobre todo como los que vivimos en la ciudad que está lejos del mar, creo que desde chiquitos queremos de pronto, por ejemplo, trabajar con tiburones o con conservación marina o hacer cosas que vemos en televisión que se ven súper chéveres, pero no tenemos ni idea cómo porque vivimos súper lejos y en una realidad muy distinta. Y yo creo que creemos que nunca vamos a llegar allá porque no es algo que uno vea en el día a día o en la familia o en los amigos. Y creo que lo más importante es creer en ti. Entonces, esto quiere decir como creer que puedes ser capaz, que cada cosa que haces te va a llevar allá, que seguramente si te vas por ese camino y le preguntas a las personas, trabajas duro, haces, digamos que todos esos pasos, seguramente lo vas a poder lograr. Pero creo que lo más importante es eso, creer en ti, creer que eso que estás haciendo o ese trabajo que estás produciendo te puede llevar a cumplir ese sueño que tú tienes algún día y te puede llevar cerquita al mar, si ese es el caso, por ejemplo.
Sabes, Mimi, esa es una linda pregunta y yo creo que me adhiero a la respuesta de Melanie. Me recuerda a una conversación que teníamos con Gaby precisamente en Cali el año pasado, cuando me hacía una entrevista acerca de, bueno, cómo están, cómo va la cosa, cómo ves, entonces conversando también con la mamá de ella. Eh, Nada es fácil en esta vida, Mimi, y a todas las personas que me están escuchando, pero sí depende muchísimo de lo que ustedes sienten aquí en este corazoncito. Y precisamente aquí vienen las palabras de Melanie que me parecen sumamente importantes. Cree en ti y lo que eres capaz de lograr, porque eso es lo único que va a marcar la diferencia en lo que realmente estás dispuesta a trabajar, a usarse todo el tiempo para llegar a lograr esta meta, a simplemente algo que no te gusta, te va a aburrir en el camino rápidamente y vas a preferir dejarlo a un lado, ¿no? Entonces, eso es algo muy importante. De mi experiencia, creo que hay momentos que llegan en la vida de uno y es lindo ver cómo ustedes tan jóvenes tienen ya este corazoncito de tiburón aquí en su pechito. Hay momentos que uno los convencen de que realmente sí, quiero hacer esto en la vida. Y ojo, no necesariamente tienes que ser biólogo marino para poder ser un gran ambientalista o científico conservacionista. Hay muchas ramas, hay muchas profesiones, o cualquier persona puede ayudar también desde su campo. Pueden haber abogados ambientales que están luchando por los tiburones, pueden haber arquitectos haciendo todo proyectos urbanistas de manera que no generen un impacto a través del desarrollo urbano en las costas, por ejemplo. Tienen este concepto verde y azul, sobre todo también en su profesional, ingenieros, civiles y todo. Todo depende realmente de llegar a lograr algo grande en la parte de conservación, indistintamente de la trinchera en la cual estés batallando, si lo lleves el tiburón y el océano aquí en el corazón y sepas de que hay que ser consciente con nuestra naturaleza y la madre tierra, ¿no? Porque la manera que trabajemos de esa forma, vamos a lograr nosotros respetar los límites nuestros como humanos y respetar los límites de la naturaleza para que podamos siempre disfrutar lo que tenemos ahora. Mi granito de arena.
Qué lindas palabras de nuestros especialistas. Bueno, con esta pregunta de Mimi, pues abrimos oficialmente la ronda de preguntas de nuestras tiburonas. Así que, Ekaterín, cuéntanos. Uy, creo que pasó algo con ella. Bueno, no importa. Mimi, ¿quieres empezar con tus preguntas?
Ok. ¿Es cierto que los tiburones tienen personalidad?
Es cierto.
Muy buena pregunta. Yo sabía que no tenía que estar en esta conversación. Yo sabía que me iba a hacer preguntas que no iba a poder responder. ¿Te das cuenta?
Yo dije antes de empezar, iban a corchar.
Yo puedo estar en una conversación llena de científicos y siempre les voy a poder responder todo lo que me pregunten. Pero este tipo de cosas, no, mentira. Sabes que es una linda pregunta y realmente no lo puedo responder desde la ciencia porque no he investigado esto, ni he leído conversaciones, o sea, no he leído estudios acerca de esto, pero puedo decir de mi experiencia buceando con tiburones de algunos tipos, tiburones galápagos, ballenas, tiburones en martillo, que muchos de ellos tienen un comportamiento bastante característico particular. No sé si pueda llamar de que tengan su propia personalidad, porque eso se me hace difícil realmente poder determinar, pero su accionar, por ejemplo, los tiburones martillo, ellos se comportan todos como un gran cardumen de peces y realmente son muy fieles a las respuestas del líder cuando están en ese pack. Entonces, pero siempre hay uno que lidera o que cambia, entonces quizás sí tengan esa personalidad única, pero ciertos casos, en los momentos en los cuales toman uno de ellos el rol de líder, como se ve también en los packs, en los packs de lobos, por ejemplo, que siempre hay un líder y el resto sigue al. Entonces, podría ser, no lo descarto, pero eso es lo que yo he apreciado, de que no puedo determinar sí de que haya características, por ejemplo, como Gaby, como mi persona, como Melanie aquí, o que tengan un background distinto, pero sí creo de que ellos individualmente tienen la capacidad de poder tomar decisiones lógicas y racionales en base a las necesidades que ellos tienen. Eso estoy completamente de acuerdo. Yo creo que muchos seres vivos, desde los más chiquitos a los más grandes, tienen esa facultad precisamente Por eso se le llaman sentient beings, seres que pueden sentir.
Muy bien. Melanie.
Desde mi perspectiva, creo que algo que dice César es cierto y es como científicamente o comprobado. Creo que primero no hay, la verdad, no sé, pero seguramente sea difícil saber exactamente qué significa una personalidad en un animal en el que no te puedes como relacionar tanto en ese sentido de entender cada individuo. Pero yo voy a decir desde mi lado, por ejemplo, trabajando con tiburón ballena, sé que eso a veces es muy notorio, como no sé tampoco si se llame personalidad, pero esa forma como cada uno puede ser diferente en la misma situación y actuar, digamos, de forma particular. Entonces, el que se te acerca súper curioso a mirarte de una forma, el que te ignora absolutamente y es como si no estás ahí, el que viene y no se te acerca de la misma forma curiosa, sino más como a marcar territorio, el que como que cada uno tiene su forma de presentarse en ese momento. Y eso a mí me parece súper lindo porque creo que es una cosa que, si bien tampoco estudio comportamiento así, es algo que solamente notas después de que estás mucho tiempo en el agua con ellos. Seguramente si estás 10 minutos, pues es el éxtasis, la emoción, la energía y listo. Pero cuando llevas mucho tiempo como viendo a los mismos animales o estando en el agua con ellos, empiezas, igual que con las personas o con los perros, por ejemplo, que empiezas a notar ciertas cosas en cada uno y dices como, ah, bueno, siempre que le pongo, no sé, la comida a mi perro, él se acerca así, pero si se la pongo al de otra persona, él se acerca de esta forma. Y creo que eso es muy lindo porque es ver como ese individualismo de los animales que a veces no estamos como tan acostumbrados a reconocer, sobre todo en animales salvajes. Como que en los domésticos uno sabe, pero en los salvajes no es tan común que uno piense en eso.
Bueno, ahora, espero que Catherine no se nos vaya de nuevo. Catherine, ¿qué pregunta tienes para los especialistas?
Sí, Gabriela, discúlpame, es que se me puso medio loco este internet y me sacó, volví a entrar. Perdóname.
No te preocupes.
Sí, bueno, con respecto a mis preguntas, sí, ya las voy a decir. Bueno, esta pregunta va para Melanie y para César. ¿Cuál ha sido el encuentro más impresionante que hayan tenido con un tiburón? Algo que los haya hecho cambiar la forma de verlos más allá de lo que enseñan los libros.
Muy bien. ¿Quién empieza?
César.
Ay, a ver, yo tengo, eso justo conversábamos el otro día también con unos amigos, me decían una pregunta similar, no solo de los tiburones, sino en general, ¿no? Pero yo he logrado categorizar estos momentos de una manera que me permitan definir cuál es aquel momento que ha sido, que más me ha llegado al corazón, el heartwarming. Tengo un momento life-threatening, que sería aquel momento en el cual me sentí más amenazado de mi vida, ¿sí? Ahí tengo un momento que es el arousing, que yo le llamo, que es el más increíble, así que me llenó de mucha emoción, adrenalina. Y, y hay uno que es humbling, que le llamo yo, que es el momento que me ha hecho sentir mucho más sencillo y humano y respetuoso de la naturaleza. Entonces, yo los sé categorizar así porque creo que eh, tengo estos momentos que me es difícil decir cuál es el mejor, cuál es el peor. Entonces, por ejemplo, para darles un poquito de adrenalina, bueno, empecemos por Life Threatening, que es el momento más riesgoso de mi vida que he tenido. Y que realmente esto fue durante mi tesis de PhD. Estaba trabajando con tiburones ballena y con tiburones martillo al mismo tiempo, haciendo marcaje y fotografías de tiburones ballena en la isla de Darwin, en Galápagos. Entonces, éramos un grupo de alrededor de unas 6 personas. En ese momento yo estaba encargado de tomar fotografías del lado dorsal derecho de los tiburones ballena, porque como tienen estos puntitos, los tiburones se los puede identificar como que fuera una huella dactilar. Entonces, a lo que salimos de la plataforma que pasó el tiburón ballena, nos acercamos todos, empecé a tomar las fotografías. Y bueno, regresé a ver, mis amigos estaban ahí, ¿no? Yo terminé mi parte, cuando termino de tomar las fotos, me detengo un segundo y digo, "Hey, nunca he estado tranquilito solo viéndole, acercándome a un tiburón ballena". Entonces, en mi idea, el tiburón ballena iba así. Entonces, yo me acerqué también, abrí mis brazos y empecé a nadar así, oh, felicidad. Y viéndole, por ejemplo, el ojito del tiburón ballena, cómo me miraba, se movió. sí, pero él seguía en su mood, seguía en su onda, ¿no? Entonces, al cabo de unos 20, 30 segundos, regreso a ver, porque digo, bueno, ya debe ser regresar con mis muchachos. No había nadie. Todos mis amigos se fueron. Todo el mundo desapareció. Éramos el tiburón ballena y yo. Estábamos a 40 metros de profundidad y no había fondo, no había tierra a la vista. Estaba lejos y una corriente horrible. Entonces, en ese momento, realmente lo único que se me vino a la cabeza y es, por eso es que es muy bueno practicar estas situaciones de emergencia, ¿no? Entonces, un buzo que hace, tienes que salir. No preguntes, no digas nada, tienes que salir. ¿Y en qué dirección vas a salir? Podría haber salido con el tiburón ballena y quizás me hubiese perdido, pero en ese momento dije, no, voy a tratar de regresar en la misma dirección en la que vine, porque en teoría, nosotros quizás, bueno, en tierra podemos decir, bueno, vemos la montaña y vamos siguiendo una referencia geográfica y regresamos en el camino que venimos, ¿no? El mar es difícil, pero igual traté de hacer lo posible por regresar en esa dirección e ir ascendiendo poco a poco hasta el momento de ya sacar mi cabeza del mar y ver si estaba ya perdido o no. Entonces, a lo que ya tenía, recuerden que estaba a 40 metros y para un buzo no podemos hacer un ascenso directo así rápido porque nos morimos en el momento. La sangre se nos vuelve como Coca-Cola, de hecho. Entonces hay que hacerlo pausadamente, pero constante. ¿Sí? Entonces fui despacio, despacio y estaba alrededor de 20, 25 metros y digo, no llego a ningún lado todavía. Esto está azul por todos lados. Dios, ¿qué hago? Entonces dije, no, a ver, quizás pude haber derivado tratando de pensar en la corriente como me estaba llevando, cambié de dirección. Voy a seguir en esta dirección, tomé un poco más a la derecha y empecé a seguir, seguir, seguir. Y ya cuando estaba llegando a 15 metros, 10 metros, era así como que ya ahora no veo nada, no veo nada, Dios, no veo nada. Y digo, tengo que salir. Bueno, de aquí sí ya empecé a pensar, bueno, me dije, bueno, Diosito, en este momento todos creemos en Diosito. Diosito, por favor, cuida a mi familia. Seguí saliendo ahí y cuando veo en ese momento unos puntitos del fondo, del fondo, del fondo, del fondo, del fondo, del fondo. Unos puntitos que se movían. Y yo, Dios mío, ya estoy viendo visiones. Entonces digo, no, tengo que acercarme. Entonces cambié de dirección nuevamente y me empiezo a acercar a esos puntitos y eran las colas de un cardumen de tiburón martillo que se los veía a lo lejos así que se estaban moviendo. Entonces ya estaba casi que a 8 metros, dije, no, tiburones martillos siempre regresan a la plataforma, porque yo los estaba estudiando y sé que se van en círculos, van a la vuelta y vuelven, siempre están regresando, dije, me voy con ellos y cogí y empecé a nadar así, nadar, 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 con todas las fuerzas a tratar de seguirlos y alcanzarlos y me iba siguiendo, alcanzando, empecé a ver ya fondo. Y ahí dije, aquí, ya lo logré, ya como sea, aquí lo logré. Entonces veo fondo y ya voy llegando, llego a la plataforma del sitio de buceo, ahí en el arco de Darwin, y voy llegando y los veo todos, ya veo ya como 5 metros, con poquito aire ya en el tanque, y veo a mis amigos así que me miraban para arriba. Así como diciendo, ¿dónde te fuiste tú? Gracias, me dejaron solo, Dios mío. Y de ahí llegué, lo único que pude hacer es ahí nerviosito, cogí, me acerqué a la parte más somera del arrecife y me quedé solito y salí y levanté ahí mi boya de seguridad, muy nervioso. Realmente, si no hubiese sido por esas colitas y esa toma de decisión de regresar en esta dirección y tomar hacia la derecha en un punto, jamás hubiese visto los tiburones. Esta es mi experiencia con los tiburones. Y ojo, el tiburón ballena fue una experiencia muy linda de verlo, pero los tiburones martillo me salvaron la vida. Por eso es que los quiero tanto.
De película, Dios mío. Eso es para un documental. Melanie, algo.
Quiero
Cuéntanos.
saber qué pasa con esa historia, ellos por qué se fueron, por qué no nadie. Bueno, la mía, yo creo que es eso que está diciendo César, como que a veces es difícil cuando uno se sienta a pensar en lo que ha vivido en el mar o las experiencias que ha tenido, como cuál es la mejor, cuál es la más, como que te ha tocado más, porque hay muchas cosas que tienen características diferentes. No sé, un día estabas teniendo un pésimo día, saliste al mar y te pasó la cosa más increíble, y aunque seguro no fue la más increíble, dentro de las increíbles, para ese día lo fue. Pero pues así hay muchas experiencias. Yo tuve una, eh, acá en Colombia con un tiburón ballena que en el Pacífico colombiano los días, digamos, de agua clarita, digámoslo así, o de buena visibilidad, no son muchos. Nosotros tenemos buena visibilidad a, no sé, unos metros, pero pues visibilidad así 20 metros es muy difícil. Y ese día el agua estaba increíble. Es de esos días que uno siente que literalmente el mar es una piscina y que puedes ver desde la lancha o el bote que estés como a 10, 15 metros de profundidad, que eso no pasa pues nunca. Y ese día me acuerdo que teníamos que salir con unas personas a hacer un tema con tiburón ballena y las personas nunca llegaron. Entonces yo esperé en el bote, la salida no sé, era a las 9, eran como las 9:20, las personas no llegaron y las personas eran las que iban a financiar la salida. Entonces estábamos el capitán, estaba yo, estábamos en el bote y yo decía, no sé qué hacer, las personas no llegaron y el capi me dijo, bueno, ¿salimos o pues cancelamos? Y yo dije, no, pues ya estamos acá, hagamos salida de investigación y pues la salida la pagamos nosotros. Que en ese momento de mar adentro, digamos que pagar la salida no era como, no pasa nada, la pagamos, sino que en verdad la salida dependía de las personas que venían. Pero yo dije, bueno, ya estamos acá, ya estamos, el día se ve bien, salgamos. Y salimos a buscar tiburones y vimos varios, ya la temporada se estaba acabando, entonces era un momento como de aprovechar los días al máximo. Vimos varios y en un momento vimos uno, yo me metí al agua, hice todo lo que tenía que hacer, tomé los datos, tomé las muestras, hice toda mi parte. Y normalmente las interacciones no son muy largas, ellas no, dependiendo de lo que esté pasando, de si se están alimentando, eh, pueden ser de 40 segundos o de 5 minutos, pero no tienden a ser tan largas. Y me acuerdo que el tiburón se fue, o sea, yo hice lo que tenía que hacer, le di una vuelta a la lancha, se fue, ya yo me iba a salir de la lancha y del agua y el tiburón volvió, pero volvió como en modo investigarme a mí. Entonces, volvió como con esta, es un poco lo que está diciendo César, como con esta cosa de el ojo, de mirarnos, pero era como, bueno, ok, el agua está muy clarita y puedo verte muy bien, como si él me lo estuviera diciendo a mí, como, ¿qué eres tú aquí? Y creo que ese momento en el que sabes que estás viendo un animal que puede pesar 30 toneladas, que es gigantesco, que está enfrente tuyo, pero que además él tiene curiosidad por ti, es una sensación completamente distinta, porque no es obviamente tú con los ojos de científico o de admirador de los tiburones, sino que sabes que están teniendo una interacción diferente. Ese día creo que el tiburón se quedó con nosotros como 40, 45 minutos solamente ahí, dándonos vueltas, le daba vueltas a la lancha, que volvía y se iba, y era como si dijera como, no, yo quiero estar un ratico más, y volvía y daba la vuelta, se quedaba, pero estaba además muy cerquita, yo estaba quieta y el tiburón estaba como a 50 centímetros, o sea, era muy cerquita, y yo todo el tiempo intentando como estar quieta para no invadir el espacio y que la interacción no se fuera a perder, pero en realidad no tenía que hacer nada, o sea, era mejor que yo me reía debajo del agua como que es lo que está pasando, qué está pasando con este tiburón. Y en ese momento le dije al capitán como, métase, o sea, usted tiene que ver esto es una cosa que no se ve todos los días y que yo no sé a este animal qué le pasa. Entonces el capitán se metió, me acuerdo que le tomó un montón de fotos y me miraba como, usted siempre habla de estos animales, pero yo no sabía que eran como tan interactivos y yo, no, esto no es normal, esto no es que todos los días pase. Y creo que al final del día fue ese día que empezó de una forma que seguramente no íbamos a terminar saliendo o que hubiera, no sé qué hubiera pasado si hubieran estado todas las personas, pero creo que es el momento que he podido ver a los tiburones ballena de otra forma completamente distinta, como literalmente como si estuviera con un individuo, él y yo intentando entendernos el uno al otro, fue demasiado increíble.
Bueno, la verdad, muy, muy interesante escuchar estas anécdotas. La verdad, pues necesito que César, pues en su Instagram haga una story time de eso, que ponga una segunda parte, que qué pasó con los compañeros. Entonces, Mimi, ¿tienes alguna otra pregunta para los especialistas?
¿Cómo logran marcar o seguir a un tiburón sin alertar su comportamiento natural?
Mm.
¿Cómo no le escuché muy bien, Mimi? ¿Me podría repetir la primera parte?
¿Cómo logran marcar o seguir a un tiburón sin alertar su comportamiento natural?
Mm.
Melanie se está riendo, creo que me está mirando toda.
Como diciendo, responde tú, por favor.
Es que César tenía muchas ganas de hablar, entonces lo estoy dejando que él vaya primero.
Hablamos primero, tenga la bondad.
Bueno, yo creo que ahí hay varias cosas, dependiendo seguramente de la especie y de lo que estés haciendo. No siempre va a ser igual, pero yo creo que desde el momento que entras al agua, de todas maneras, ya cambia el comportamiento natural o ya cambia lo que esté pasando, porque cualquier cosa, aunque uno intenta hacer como el menor disturbio posible o no interactuar para que no cambien lo que está pasando, si los estás intentando grabar o ver, o por ejemplo, si los quieres marcar que no se vayan a ir. Creo que igual desde que entras al agua la cosa cambia, ¿cierto? Pero yo creo que es un poco lo que estaba diciendo César de los tiburones martillo y es entender cómo es ese animal. Entonces, si tú sabes más o menos cómo tienden a comportarse en cierta situación, si se están alimentando, qué está pasando, si están apareándose, qué está pasando, como leer la situación en la que estás tú, en la que vas a entrar, y según eso, si sabes del animal, entender qué va a pasar, digamos que, o cómo se van a comportar, si se van a quedar todos como un grupo, si está cada uno solo por su lado, si están como en éxtasis, por ejemplo, si hay comida en el agua, y según eso, acomodarse a esa situación. Yo creo que igual hay un montón de medidas, como por ejemplo, no sé, hay situaciones en las que no puedes bucear porque las burbujas van a alterar el comportamiento, dependiendo de lo que esté pasando, pero creo que es eso, es intentar como mimetizarte con la situación que esté pasando y entender, según eso que estás viendo, eh, cómo debería ser tu acercamiento. Obviamente creo que hay cosas que siempre se deben cuidar, como la velocidad en la que entras al agua, lo rápido que te vas a acercar al animal, lo mucho que te vas a mover tú o que vas a como dispersar el agua. Si haces splash, seguramente eso cambie absolutamente lo que esté pasando, pero es como entrar sigilosamente a entender lo que está pasando y según eso ir leyendo, pero siempre acercarte con cautela para que no vaya a haber como tanto cambio y puedas finalmente hacer lo que estás interesado en hacer.
Muy bien. Y pues estamos en la recta final, así que nuestra última pregunta es de Ekaterín. Así que, Ekaterín, cuéntanos.
Sí, ya. Después de haber buceado con tiburones en distintos lugares, ¿cómo ha cambiado su manera de entender su comportamiento?
Otra vez me están mirando. Ya, creo que voy a responder.
Hagan piedra, papel o tijera.
Dale.
Mira, yo creo que hay una particularidad bastante interesante. Voy a retomar de regreso la pregunta inicial de las personalidades de los tiburones. En todos los lugares del planeta hay tiburones. Y por ejemplo, hablando de una misma especie, tiburones martillos se ven agregando aquí en nuestro Pacífico colombiano, nuestro Pacífico costarricense, nuestro Pacífico ecuatoriano, pero también se ven en las costas de Japón, se ven en algunos lugares de Indonesia. De hecho, estamos haciendo un estudio para tratar de determinar dónde nomás se ven. Se los ve en Hawái, ya, y aparentemente se le ve la misma especie. Fernale Winnie, el tiburón martillo de ondas, la misma especie, se agrega de la misma manera en grandes cardúmenes, están moviéndose de un lado a otro como un grupo en conjunto, ¿no? Pero sí hay una respuesta en algunos casos diferente hacia las señales que ellos reciben para cuándo actuar o cuándo cambiar de comportamiento, porque obviamente ellos se están adaptando al sitio donde están. Digamos que en Darwin y Wolf o en Malpelo, que está en Colombia, si hay un cambio de mareas y la corriente cambia, entonces ellos en general para los tiburones martillo más rico es, hay mucha corriente eh, y ellos pueden o utilizan estas áreas de descanso, ¿no? Y de ahí pueden inmediatamente detectar qué sitios deben ir ellos para alimentarse en la noche. En cambio, en otros sitios hay menos corriente o es uno solo planchonal, por ejemplo, en el oeste de Australia, en Ningaloo, saben ellos también agregar allá, pero no tienen esta diferencia de irse al otro lado de la isla, sino que cambian su comportamiento a ver de dónde vienen las señales químicas para saber a dónde ellos tienen que alimentarse. Entonces, la respuesta también va a depender de qué necesitan ellos al momento de alimentarse. En algunos sitios se alimentan de un tipo de calamar, en otros sitios se alimentan de otro tipo de calamar, entonces van a estar buscando también un poco esas señales que les indiquen a ellos a dónde ir. Entonces, con este ejemplo, lo que quiero decir es que así como nosotros los humanos, que siempre en el norte, por ejemplo, en Canadá, todos nos abrigamos y buscamos lugares de más calorcito, en la playa de Barranquilla, en cambio estamos buscando los lugares de más frío para poder estar acorde a la temperatura. Tiburones también van a buscar en diferentes partes del planeta las condiciones que más se asimilen a sus necesidades biológicas y por ende van a cambiar o van a adaptar su comportamiento al alimento que tienen y a las señales.
Bueno, terminamos con César. Melanie, ¿qué tienes para decirnos? Y ahora sí no puedes escapar.
Tengo una pregunta. ¿Me puedes repetir un momento la pregunta que estaba pensando en algo y después dije, no sé si eso responde realmente lo que la pregunta decía?
Catherine, repite la pregunta.
Después de haber buceado con tiburones en distintos lugares, ¿cómo ha cambiado tu manera de entender su comportamiento?
Creo que sí, justamente es lo que estaba diciendo César, y es que depende de muchísimas cosas y de las especies en general con la que estés, pero ellos seguramente se van a comportar de formas diferentes según la situación, según lo que esté pasando, según el ambiente, según si están comiendo. Pero creo que entre más, en mi caso personal, entre más interactúo con tiburones, o pues digamos, entre más tengo la posibilidad de verlos y de estar con ellos, yo desde muy chiquita, creo que desde que tenía la edad de ustedes, de pronto más chiquita, empecé a ver a los tiburones como si fueran perritos. Y yo creo que hay mucha gente a la que le he oído decir eso también, como uno siempre los ve como en las películas como este monstruo marino que se va a comer a la gente o que va a atacar el barco y que va a hacer una cosa terrible. Y en realidad, cuando logras verlos desde otro lado, es como muchas veces funciona literalmente como un perrito que hace, viene y te huele y muerde lo que sea, no sé, muerde los zapatos, muerde la mesa, muerde lo que sea que vea que es diferente, le llama la atención, y los tiburones funcionan de la misma forma, digamos que tocar no funciona para ellos, sino que tienen que literal estar cerca, digamos que pegarle con esta parte y saber qué es, pues lo muerdo, saber si sí me gusta, si no me gusta, digamos que esa es la parte como de acercamiento y de conocer y de descubrir, pero yo creo que entre uno más está con ellos, más se da cuenta eh, que no se trata nunca eso de un monstruo marino, no se trata nunca de un animal que lo único que hace es comer gente o comer en general, que es una máquina de matar, sino que en realidad eso, tienen personalidades, actúan diferente. Por ejemplo, lo que está diciendo César, siguen a un líder, tienen formas de cuidarse entre ellos, tienen como sus formas de actuar y normalmente cualquier cosa que pueda pasar, una interacción negativa que pueda pasar, normalmente tiene que ver con curiosidad y con estoy intentando ver qué está pasando en el agua porque algo me llamó mucho la atención. Entonces que creo que cada vez más es, reitero, esa forma de son como perritos y las interacciones que podemos tener o las formas en las que podemos estar con ellos en el agua cada vez nos dan más, como más posibilidades de ver en realidad lo que son y no estar catalogados bajo esa imagen negativa, sino que en realidad son unos animales increíbles y hay más de 550 especies. Creo que hay tantas cosas y tantas cosas por descubrir, tantas cosas increíbles que muchas veces solo los metemos en una cajita que dan susto, que dan miedo, que son peligrosos, pero no se da esa posibilidad de ir más allá. Entonces, creo que eso es lo más lindo, cada vez poder convencerte aún más de que son animales increíbles.
Bueno, con estas bellas enseñanzas vamos a terminar la sesión en español porque hay algo muy importante de esta nueva versión y es que hay una sesión en español y otra en inglés. Así que vamos a cerrar con unos mensajes. Yo quiero empezar diciendo y recalcando de nuevo la importancia y lo que representa para mí este espacio, porque es que no es solamente ver a niños interesados por una especie que es mi favorita, sino que también es importante para el océano y es también, o sea, es ver aquí niños, es ver aquí a las nuevas generaciones interesadas por saber más del océano y la vida que éste alberga. Y esta clase de eventos demuestran que cuando uno escucha a la juventud, a un niño, a un adolescente, ya están abriendo un camino al cambio. Así que yo quiero agradecer a mis tiburoncitas por su aporte y por sus preguntas. ¿Qué mensaje tienen para los especialistas y para los acuáticos también?
Gracias por esta oportunidad, porque para mí que me inviten a hacer algo así significa que reconocen que me importan los tiburones, no solo que me gusten.
Muy bien. Ekaterín, ¿tú qué quieres decir?
Em, bueno, yo quiero decir que cada vez que miro el mar pienso en los silenciosos guardianes que serían los tiburones que lo habitan. Los tiburones no son monstruos del océano, son arquitectos invisibles de su equilibrio, testigos de millones de años de evolución y sabiduría natural. Defenderlos no es solo proteger una especie, es cuidar la memoria viva del océano, su ritmo, su fuerza y su silencio. Fue un honor compartir con ustedes esta convención. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, pues muy orgullosa porque como dijo Silvier una vez, tú no puedes proteger algo sin conocerlo. Y hoy conocimos más, así que desde hoy también cuidamos más. Recuerden que todo está conectado y que ustedes, niños y adolescentes que están viendo esto ahora o que lo verán después, tienen un superpoder. Información y tecnología. Les recuerdo que esta versión de la Convención de Tiburones es en colaboración con las organizaciones Saving Our Sharks y Desmentir Tiburones, además de ser parte de la agenda del Mes Nacional del Tiburón, mes que ambas organizaciones aprovechan para concientizar a las personas sobre el valor de los tiburones. Así que ya es hora. So let's switch language and start speaking in English. So thank you, my Shark Juniors. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Shark Seniors. So bye, Spanish session, and hello, the English session. So let's start. We have here Mariana, Yanis, Mehdi, and I can see Peter. Oh my god. Okay, it doesn't matter. So hello everyone and welcome to the very first English
Hello.
session of Shark Convention 2025. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Gabriela Casuso. I'm a 17 years old ocean educator from Colombia and the founder and leader of Proyecto Acuática. I'm really happy to share this space with all of you and with my fellow ocean advocate, Mady Berrada, who is 16 years old and joining us all the way from Morocco. Hi,
Yeah.
Mehdi.
Hello.
How are you? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, I've always been ready.
Ah, I like
Yeah.
that confidence. This year's theme is overfishing and the sustainable management of key species, like sharks. But why sharks? Because according to the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, over 30% of shark species are threatened with extinction due to overfishing and lack of protection. And when sharks disappear, the balance of entire marine ecosystem is at risk. So before starting this session, this version of Shark Convention, it's in collaboration with the Mexican organizations Saving Our Sharks and Desmitificando Tiburones. And it's also in the agenda of the Sharks National Month, where both organizations raise awareness between people about the value of sharks. So today we're joined by three amazing experts that I want to call them the gods of the ocean. I'm going to introduce them. The first one is Yanis Papastamatio. He is a member of Migramar, the Latin American network of scientists Migramar, a professor and shark ecologist who tracks how sharks live, hunt, and survive to help design better conservation plans. Mariana Arguero is a marine scientist and engineer who explores how sharks move and how much energy they use, combining ocean science and engineering. And the last one is Dr. Peter Klimley, also known as Dr. Hammerhead, also a member of the Latin American Scientist Network, Migramar, and he has been studying shark behavior for over 30 years, diving with hammerheads and tagging white sharks. So, for our shark seniors, it is a pleasure, such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'd love to open this part of the session um, with some questions to hear about your experience and as scientists, communicators. This is the methodology. One question me, one question me, and we continue like that.
Okay.
Okay? So we don't have Peter now, but it doesn't matter. We're going to continue with Mariana and with Yanis, and if he comes, we start the question with him. Okay?
All right.
All right. I want to start
Yeah,
because
of
I'm
course.
really excited. And I want to start with Yanis because when I was searching about you in the internet, I saw an article in National Geographic that really, really got me thrilled. And actually, I showed it to Mehdi
Yeah.
in the sessions.
Yeah.
That is about how sharks can create like bonds, like have friends. And I want to talk about that. During that research, what surprised you the most? How was it? Tell us about the experience.
Yeah, so this was part of the research. We were looking into the sort of social systems of sharks, and when we talk about social animals, what we mean is animals that like to spend time with other individuals. Doesn't mean they're actually friends, but they're forming associations with each other. These bonds, presumably because there's some evolutionary advantage to doing so. And the question is, why do that? And you can see that, we know about schools of fish, we know about flocks of birds. Mammals are very well known to have these social structures. But for the longest time, we never really thought that sharks, behave like that. They were never considered social animals. And I think the problem was that we just didn't have the methods to identify that they were social. And that has changed, I would say, in the last probably 20 years when we've started to reveal a lot more about our understanding of shark social systems. But most of that work had been done in captive studies, experimental studies with captive sharks. Much less had been done in the wild. And so when we were doing this study, the one you're referring to, which was with grey reef sharks, and we were working in a very remote location, an atoll in the Central Pacific Ocean called Palmyra, which is uninhabited, as a little research station, but that's it. It's protected. It's a U.S. federal wildlife refuge. It's a protected area, lots of sharks. And so we started to use new methods to study the social systems of these animals and see that they were forming these social groups. So you had, in some cases, what was surprising, some pairs of sharks were kind of forming social bonds that were lasting at least 4 years. That was the maximum duration of our study. So you had these very, sort of surprisingly strong bonds between sharks of the same individuals wanting to hang out with each other over long periods of time. And in a lot of ways, it kind of reminded me of what you might see with seabirds, where seabirds have these colonies, and these birds will return to the same colony, and they will form associations with other birds. It's kind of similar to what we were seeing with these sharks, which was very surprising. Um, but the sort of next questions it raised is why? What is the advantage? Why form a social bond if you're a reef shark? And that was kind of the next stage of the study.
Mehdi, you have some questions for Yanis or Mariana?
Okay, so I have a question for Mariana. So, what made you want to study how sharks move and ray moves? Like, what was the?
Well, Official, like my background, it's in automotive engineering. So I
Wow.
used to work with cars and how they move, especially the driving dynamics. But the first time that I dove with a shark, it was a treasure shark. I was like, oh my god, what's going on with this caudal fin, and how that work, and why it's so big, and why why is it an advantage or what, and why is, like how really they actually move and how they use the different types of fins. So I went out with so many questions, and it really felt like a passion. Like the automotive was never a passion, it was interesting, but it was okay. And after diving and diving and diving with sharks, I was asking myself so many things. So that's why now I'm like taking my engineering knowledge to study sharks as a natural machine, let's say. But it started like that. Yeah. My brain tried to understand how everything works, and especially how it moves. And with sharks, I love this topic.
Okay, it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I have a question. I'm going to choose Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Mariana. Okay. Mariana is the co-author of La Gran Aventura de Kai, a book that is for the new generations. So let's talk about that a little bit. What encouraged you? Like, how was the idea? How came this idea of making a book?
Yeah, it's on the book. Well, Nati and me, the other co-founder of Ocean Mar Project and the co-author, we were diving in Revillagigedo, and it was amazing, right? And so many sharks, and then we were like, like some sharks maybe came from, I don't know, from Galapagos, and all these connection. And in the way back, that it's really wrong. It's about one day in the boat we were talking about it, and we thought, like, it will be really amazing that the kids know that there's like the interconnection, like probably there's a shark that goes from so many parts in Latin America, and that the impact that we do in one part, it it maybe change the other side of, or the other country, other side of the world. So that's what we want to do. Like the main goal from this book is that people understand that we are all connected, that the sharks are connected, and that if we protect one part, we need to protect also the other one, because they are moving all the time. And we also talk about some problems like plastic and overfishing, things like that. Really, really subtle, I will say. But yeah, that's the main goal. We want that the kids start interested by sharks, and also the interconnection of not only sharks but all living beings, and that we share this planet with them, and that we need to behave like that.
Okay. Medi?
Okay, so now I have a question for Yanis. So, how do you analyze the movement data from sharks that you tag? Is it with AI or just GPS, or how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kind of a tough one to answer. I'll first off say that the way we analyze shark movements and animal movements in general has changed a lot in the last few decades. So I started about 25 years ago, and then the analysis we were using was very, very simple, and now it's gotten much, much more complex. Um, so that it depends what your question is. Is your question, what area do these animals use? What is your question? What habitats do they use? Is your question, do they behave differently in certain habitats, or do they behave differently at certain times of the day? So you really have to kind of refine what your questions are before you decide what analytical tools you're going to use.
Mm.
So AI is obviously something that's coming into all of our lives a lot more, and that's also happening in data analysis. And so, for example, some of the tools that I like to use are camera tags. So I actually put cameras on the sharks to try and see what they're seeing. And now we're starting to use AI to analyze this video footage. The way we've done it kind of up till now is you have somebody who has to watch hours and hours and hours of video, and count if there's any other sharks in the screen, things like that. But now we're starting to use AI to do that for us. We can also use AI to look at how the behaviors of sharks change over certain time periods, for example, day and night, and AI to analyze the data and very quickly process very large amounts of data. So AI is certainly something that's coming into the analysis a lot. But again, the specific tools we use really depends on what your question is, because animal movement is kind of a broad topic, and there can be many sort of questions within that broad framework of where do animals go, or how do they move, how do they use their environments.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have also a question for Yanis. What do you think is like the biggest behavioral threat that sharks face due to human activity, like noise pollution or overfishing?
You mean what is the greatest threat to sharks from human activity? I mean, overfishing is going to be the clearly the number one threat they face. So whether that's targeted fisheries or bycatch, where they're not necessarily the target, but they're killed or perhaps retained nonetheless. Overfishing is going to be by far the greatest threat that sharks face. Now, obviously, there's other threats that are going to be important. Habitat modification can be very important, depending on the species. So, for coastal species, for example, habitat modification can be a big one. That's something we face, let's say, off the coast of Florida, where we have a lot less mangroves than we traditionally had. And for example, mangrove habitats are very important for some shark species, and not just sharks, rays as well. And so the loss of that has had a big impact. Climate change can be an impact as well. And then you're having other threats like microplastics and things like that. But these are all going to be substantially less of a threat than overfishing, which is going to be certainly the major one at the moment.
Maybe?
Okay, so now for a question for Mariana. Um, you've worked in very different countries, right? And how do cultural differences affect the way you approach marine conservation education?
That's a good question. Well, we focus a lot in Latin America, which is not
Ah,
that
yeah.
different. But we have also worked a lot in the Canary Islands. And in the Canary Islands, it's different because, for example, there we spent some months to also see like what's going on with them, and we collaborate with a lot of local organizations. That's also really important to meet like the local people because, for example, there the plastic issue and garbage is not such a big issue that we have in Latin America, right? So we focus in different things, especially of what's the main problem. But yeah, we do it especially with that, like, like uh, collaborating with local organizations or with people. We go to schools also and things like that. And for me, everything of this path started in Asia, and for me, a shock was, and the one of the really breaking points that made me change my career. It was the issue of the trash. It was unbelievable, so much, and it was really crazy. But one of the shocks that I got, I used to live in Germany at that point. I found trash in German, and I was like, "What is there in Malaysia? Trash in German?" Uh, so then I researched, and I sent like almost all trash from Europe are sent to Asia. So that's why, like in the Canary Islands, we don't see trash. They actually separate it. But we didn't focus in do not throw trash on the beach, but like eliminate the consumption because we are all connected and your trash maybe will end up in Thailand. So that's why like we try to focus a lot in the interconnection and see like what piece of this huge puzzle of issues eh, it's like the main important in every country.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. And well, I have a special question for you, Mariana, because I think you saw that in the Spanish session we had girls, all were girls. um, Tell me, what would you say to young girls interest in science, engineering, ocean activism, who might not see many role models yet?
I would say to follow your dreams no matter what. I had a lot of like hard moments in my path, like since my bachelor, because I was a girl. Eh, but at the end, you just need to follow your path. It doesn't matter if someone tell you, no, no, you're not a boy, you're not going to do that. Because at the end, if you follow your dreams, everything just fix and that's it. And actually, with the time, I think there are many women in this area. Actually, right now, I'm going to start my PhD, and there are a lot of women also in my master. So I think in science, it's really changing. So that's good. And that motivate also the young girls. You know, engineering it's another topic. It's much more complicated, but it's shifting. And yeah, I just say like follow your dreams no matter what. It doesn't matter. Also, like I will say that to boys, just follow your dreams. It doesn't matter if it's in science or in art, because at the end it's all interconnected, right? And for example, your beautiful picture of the whale shark or book, you know, we not only need scientists to protect sharks, you know, we need artists, we need teachers, we need like all kind of professionals, and actually also local people. So we all only need to follow our dreams and learn about what are the issues in our planet, how can we help, and everyone can help in some way. It doesn't matter if they are scientists or not.
Okay, now that we're talking a little bit about that, I have a special number that is that in Latin America and the Caribbean, just the 14% of the girls between 15 and 19 years old wants to work in like a STEM field, like in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think that is really important because something that I know is that I might find, I don't know, maybe more boys in my career because I'm going to study biology now in this semester, or maybe I could find more girls. But what I want to say is that don't think a lot about like the if there is more boys or more girls, just to enjoy what you love, because it is what you love, it's your passion. So don't let like the thoughts or what people would say like impact you in a bad way. So maybe you have another question.
I have one last question for Yanis. I really wanted to know the answer. Is that have you found a big differences in behavior between shark species, or like there's bad patterns that show up across all of them?
Yeah, so we definitely see differences between species, and as you know, you can have some species that are very residential and stay in one place, and others that will move over large areas. But what we also see is it's not surprising that you get differences in behavior between species. I think what has been more surprising is that you may get often differences within a species. And so now we've started to realize that we can't just think of, white sharks do this, gray reef sharks do this, but rather understand that certain individuals will behave some ways and others will behave in other ways. You have this sort of individual variability. And how much variability you see will also vary by species. So, for example, within reef sharks, you'll definitely see some, but you'll probably see more variability in white sharks. We see a lot of variability. So, like, one white shark does this, another white shark does this, another one does this. So, we can't classify everybody in sort of one sort of general sense or put them lump them in one group just because they're in certain species. So, the species will differ in their behavior between each other, but then even within the species, you may see a lot of differences in how individuals behave.
All right. Thank you.
Well, and I also have a question for Yanis that is, how does I think that this is one of the fields in like marine biology that, or at least in biology science, in biology that really caught my attention. That is the study of predator behavior. I think it's one of my favorites now. So, how does predator behavior science help us to build better conservation strategies?
Well, so I mean, predators, and obviously, predators are a pretty broad statement, right? I mean, a little spider is a predator, a great white is a predator, a wolf is a predator. But when we're talking, let's say, about upper level predators or predators towards the top of the food chain, then we might expect those animals to play an important role in their ecosystem. And that means that if those animals are then removed or lost, then you might start to see changes in the ecosystem that happen because these animals are gone. But that really is going to also vary based on the species and their behavior. So again, we tend to generalize and make statements like, if you remove this species, the ecosystem will collapse. That's not really true. I mean, some species are going to have a very strong effect on ecosystems, others may not. And so it's really important that we understand how these animals, that these predators, these large predators, what effects do they have on their ecosystems, and how might their loss cause changes in the structure of the ecosystem. And again, one of the ways we would do that is to study the hunting behavior of these predators. And again, try to see, what are they eating? How are they catching their prey? How much are they eating? That's a really important point. How do they change the behavior of their prey? And these are all the really important questions that will help us understand what is the ecological role these animals play.
Okay. Well, I have two questions in general. The first one is, what do you think is like the most powerful or the thing that you always remember in your divings? For example, I saw like a couple of days ago in Yanni's Instagram that you're right now, or at least you were in Malpelo. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did just get back from Malpelo. I worked a lot in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, Galapagos, Cocos, Revillagigedo, but the one place I hadn't been to yet was Malpelo. So this was my first trip out there. Spectacular location, very very beautiful place. We went there to study the sharks. But as you might have seen from some of my videos, what really impressed me when I was there was actually not necessarily the sharks, but some of the teleos fish. There was some schools of jacks, that some of the highest biomass of fish I've ever seen in my life. Like that jack school was just hard to believe you were witnessing that many fish, predatory fish. Jacks are important predators as well, in one location. And so diving in these places can often be quite challenging because you're very, very remote, which means that if you get into trouble, there's not much help coming to rescue you. They're often characterized by places with very high currents. They get deep quickly. You can have aggressive animals there. So there's a lot of sort of precautions you have to take when diving in these places, because if things go wrong, they can go wrong quite quickly.
Mariana?
Well, there were really special dives. Like the first time that I saw a shark was like love at the first sight. But I think the most impactful dive that I had in general, I was diving in Thailand, Richelieu Rock. It's like towards Myanmar, really far away. It was like 2 hours speedboat to get there, really remote. And it was amazing. It was like my dive number 5 or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like in heaven, like so many fish, colors and corals. And it was beautiful. And then suddenly a fish just passed by and it had like a rope, like so tight. And it was impossible to help them. Like it was really fast and it was super deep, like really hurting. And I was like, I'm in heaven, super far away from land, and this fish is going to die. Like I saw the impact that we have even far away from land. So that was I think the point when my brain just make the switch, like I need to something about this, there's an issue and I really need to do something. And I think there started this like idea of leaving my engineering career or my automotive career to focus in ocean conservation. Like that was really hard dive. I was super sad, but I was thinking all the time about that fish, and I will never forget it because yeah, it really impacted me.
Okay. And well, okay, let me wait a second. Yes,
Yes, did you hear me okay?
just in time. Peter, hi.
That's great. I know
How are
you
you?
very well.
Hello.
Nice to
Okay.
see you, Yanis.
Hey, Pete, how you doing?
You look a little older, and so do I.
It's unfortunate to hear, but reality.
Well, Peter, you arrived just in time.
Okay.
um, before the golden question. But first, I want to ask some questions to you.
Somebody's just. I have somebody working.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay,
Okay, here it
I'm
is.
back. I am back, as James Brown would say, but you never heard of him. He was a singer.
Okay. So, Peter, I have a question for you, and it's
Hopefully, it's
that
not a hard one. Make it an easy one now.
um, you've tagged many sharks during your career. Tell me, in what ways has this helped to define better marine protected areas?
Well, we started tagging with these coded tags, and we installed bottom mounted listening stations around Wolf Island and Darwin Island. We were able to show that the sharks move from between the islands. Actually, a number of the sharks that we tagged was kind of amazing. 12 of them left as a school after we tagged them at Wolf and went to Darwin. But these tags allow you to determine residency. The problem is generally they're external, so they're rubbed off. So it's really important to catch the animal and put it in the body cavity of the animal. We've also put satellite tags on sharks, hammerhead sharks, and Alex Hearn is about to publish 12 years of our doing that. But they don't last. They don't stay on. Again, this is external, so they don't stay on the shark that long. And I'm not so interested in conservation. I'm an animal behaviorist, and I'm interested in the ocean. It's we can only see maybe 50 feet, 30 feet. In the air, we can see miles. Yet animals in the ocean go from one place to another. I tagged a hammerhead shark at an underwater mountain in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean, 20 miles from shore, and it went 10 miles away in the middle of the night, moonless night, turned around and came right back to the seamount. How do they do that? Now you go to the store, you go on a road, there's asphalt, there's white line, and there's a yellow line on the outside. But animals in the ocean don't have that. And I did a magnetometer survey of this seamount, going around and around and around and around it with a magnetometer, and found that there were magnetic ridges leading from it, and then I superimposed the sharks' movements on this map, and found that they were moving along these magnetic ridges and valleys. And it was very controversial at the time. A little, maybe Yanis might say, a little less. Yanis, of course, has done an experiment where he was looking at the detection of magnetic fields. Wonderful experiment, actually. It's a small world, isn't it? But
It is.
somebody that's done work on it too, and it's still they always want to explain an animal's navigation ability by its somehow determining its location by knowing the magnetic intensity and the inclination and everything. But a more simple way of doing it is piloting. Now, I went to South America and to Argentina, Buenos Aires, and I was on a ship. They traveled all the way around the point and came back to Chile. And that ship was staying almost in vision of shore. It was piloting. It was doing what I think sharks do, like a helicopter going along a power line or a road, not a plane that has a direction and so forth, GPS, you know. So anyway, and it's probably one mechanism of orient. So white sharks, when they go to Hawaii, okay, most of the time, you know, for 3/4, they're at the surface. And at the surface, the Earth's main field, which is a dipole, negative and positive, is dominant. And they can, by measuring with the hammerhead, I wanted to study hammerheads because of the head. I thought it's incredible. It's so different. It's a bizarre adaptation. If I could understand its function, maybe I could understand something very important in the ocean. And I believe it's a gradiometer. And running on the beach, before I did my magnetometer survey, I ran with a very famous geophysicist. And I was telling him what I was doing. He said, well, give me a gradiometer and I could find it easily myself. Okay. So, you know, here's a little anthropomorphization, but anyway, so that's a really important question. It's a behavioral question. Now, Yanis probably has something to say about that. He's not only a behaviorist, but he's a top-notch ecologist and wonderful modeling statistics he used. So he's something, and he's tagged a lot of sharks too. The interesting thing, by the way, now is I'm involved in the studies of Mobula. Mobula's array, the manta ray. Now, when I was at Seamount, they were just moving slowly. They're dumb cows. They're feeding on the grass, but they're not at all. The reef manta ray has 8 different types of feeding it. Sometimes they stack on top of each other. Sometimes they get in a line. Sometimes they go around in circles to concentrate the zooplankton. So rays have interesting behavior too. You know, even the planktivores, the ones that eat plankton. And then when they mate, they get in these whirlpools. They go around and around, and then the male and the female go off and, you know, do the thing. And anyway, Yanis, why don't you say a little something about your tagging and what you found?
No, I'll just say, because I had spoken a little bit about it before you came along, but I would say that your hammerhead study now is not considered controversial. I think you got it right. I wasn't around in the 80s when it came out, but
so this is a lesson to you youngsters.
Yeah,
I tried to publish that 8 times. One time, when I heard from Europe that I needed to do this and this and this, I said to my wife, I don't want to die before I publish this. And finally, in the 8th attempt, there'd been some experiments done in Hawaii showing that tuna detect magnetic fields. And so the editor was willing to take a risk. And because it was criticized so many times, I ended up having to write a paper 23 pages long in a journal that generally likes papers that are less than 5 pages long. So anyway, and I love the fact now that you know, I'm old and I'm retired, but I'm writing a book. I'm editing a book on complex behavior in the marine environment with papers on everything from limpet territoriality to tube-blenny all kinds of things. But anyway, that we have young people or middle-aged people like Yanis to carry the football over the line. So it's interesting. Today, we had this World Cup soccer tournament, okay, and our president Trump got in the group when they were actually celebrating, and so someone was interviewing him, and she looked at him and she said, you need to have a decree that we no longer call it soccer, but we call it football. It is football. He knows it's football. He's a friend. Anyway, that has nothing to do with sharks. But
Okay. Mary, you have some questions for Peter?
Yeah, I have a general question. It's kind of simple. It's what's the main reason hammerhead sharks swim in big groups? Like, is it more for safety, hunting, or something else?
So, well, I studied them at an underwater mountain, what we call a seamount, and they were in groups during the day. And I was always kind of, why do they form groups? Because they're big. Why they don't have to worry too much about predators. And and people always, when they look at a school, they think it's a phalanx of soldiers marching in line. A body length apart and in the same direction. And they're doing that to some part. But individuals leave that. Now, these schools at the seamount, which I said were primarily made of females, and the females, it's kind of with sharks, when they give birth, it could be almost a third of their body mass, the female. So she puts a lot of energy into having babies, and they don't get reproductively mature until larger than the males. And so in the seamount, they move offshore earlier than the males. They form these schools, and they fight amongst each other. And these vixen females, the big ones, they can establish their position in the center. And then the males come darting in, and they rotate their clasper in a very provocative way and pair it with a large one. So the schooling in part has to do at the seamount with mate selection. Now, generally, when I've followed them away from the seamount, and I have many of them tagged at the seamount, and I can detect them with my receiver. I just detect one. So when they're going out and foraging, I think they're doing it by themselves. But then they may move, as I said earlier, when we tagged them at Wolf Island, I think a dozen of them moved at the same time, moved over to Wolf Island. And also when I was at the seamount, the sharks disappeared. And why they disappear, And they disappeared in groups. Because I had a monitor there, I'm listening. We're detecting when they leave, and I assume that if they left within 15 minutes or maybe together. But anyway, there was an upwelling event. That's cold water comes up, and they left at that time, and then they came back. To my surprise, and so I said, well, how the hell did they do that? So this was way back when, because I'm an old fart, and they it's just when they got satellites up, and so we're able to look at the temperature, the satellite temperatures, and show that there was an upwelling. So it's kind of like as scientists, we like to be creative, and we like to use different tools. Here we are on the ground, putting these electronic tags on the sharks, and then we're finding out when they leave and when they come back, and then we're using a satellite all the way up there to detect the water mass movement. So that one was really kind of fun because we use these different techniques. So I hope I've given you the thing about it is the ocean. It's so easy to study animals on land. We can see so far. And so people have learned so much about birds in particular. Birds are very easy to study. But sharks, they're hard to study. I mean, as I said, and in terms of getting in the water and studying them, which I did, almost nobody ever studied. Even now, very few people actually have been able to spend day after day in that school looking at the sharks and seeing what they do. And that's what made it such a wonderful. When you study things, if you can find a system where you can actually see the sharks, see them, or your animal, like we did at the Seamount, and then, or white sharks off the Farallon Islands, seeing them feed. I mean, seeing predation is very rare. And so when I was a graduate student, I was starting out, I was working with a great scientist named Don Nelson, amazing guy, technically incredible. And Yanis knows him. Yeah, you may have been a student as a.
No, I never met him. I was Chris Lowe's student, so I came in.
Chris Lowe's student.
Yeah, I came in a few years after he died, unfortunately, but he was also a big influence on me.
Of course, because we're a family. There's Don, there's myself, then my students. So Don, Chris Lowe, who's a terrific scientist, and his students. So I'm in the office with Don, and this was before people had ever many people had gotten in the water with sharks. Everybody thought they were all man-eaters. Okay, this is back in the late 70s. Okay, that's how old I am. And he pulls out this scrap of paper, and on it is typed. And it's from this. He was a curator, Earl Held, of the San Francisco Aquarium. He died actually, but he had seen at this mountain, this underwater mountain, Las Animas, in the middle of nowhere in the Gulf Coast, these schools of hammerhead sharks. And Don looked me in the eye and he said, "Now, if you really want to study sharks, you should get in the water and study these." And then he said, "But hammerheads are the third most dangerous of all sharks." So I spent a whole year looking for them. One day, off Sarava, not far from La Paz, we jumped in the water. There they were. And so we went back to La Paz, and we brought this sound system to attract them. And we lowered it down, the speaker down in the water to about 100 feet. And there I am with my scuba gear, waiting for the sharks to arrive. As you said, boom, 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 boom. We'd studied this, these sounds attract silky sharks. None of them arrived. So I come to the surface, and I'm sitting there with Don, and we're saying, "Jesus, what's wrong?" And we had a fellow named Ted Wilson. He was a volunteer, a wonderful swimmer, and he had to go to the bathroom. So he gets in the water, and he's going to the bathroom. He says, "They're here." And we realized that at that moment that the scuba, because we'd studied sound, was making these sounds that frighten the sharks, the bubbles coming up to the surface. So we put on our snorkels, we swam out, and we could see these sharks vaguely underneath us in a school. And I took a big breath, and I dove down, and suddenly the sharks are on either side of me. I could touch them, I'd go right through them. They're not eating me. But then I looked, they got small mouths. Why the hell are they going to eat me? I'm too big to beat for a bite. So I get underneath, and I'm looking up, and it's beautiful when you see them and came to the surface. And then that led to studies of hammerhead sharks. That's how I got started on studying sharks. Because I wanted to do it. I had read Dian Fossey, who everybody had studied gorillas from cages. And I want to do that. And Dian Fossey got outside a cage and got next to gorillas and studied them. And so I wanted to do what she had done. a woman. I wanted to imitate what she had done with sharks. So anyway,
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Actually, when Peter talked about how hard it is to study sharks, it brings me memories because I started to love sharks since I was like 9, 10 years old. And I'm going to tell something. I love challenges. So when I can, if I can, obviously, I will want to swim with sharks because I only like did like two dives. One when when I was 15, and the other when I was like 15, almost 16. So I hope to see this beautiful species someday. not
so
only,
so
not only,
Gabriella, uh,
huh?
are you Colombian or are you Colombian? Okay, so Malpelo Island is an incredible place to
Yes.
see sharks, and it is. And there's a woman who is uh, done many studies there. God, I hear a senior moment. I'm not remembering her name, but you,
Sandra.
Sandra Basuto.
Sandra
Yeah.
Basuto,
Yeah.
she would take you out there. She once you get a little older, she's just you got to get in touch with her and say you love sharks, and she's now the director of Migramar.
Yeah.
By the way, I started that group with Alex Hearn 20, 30 years ago. It's giant now, and it's great, And I put in my trust. I've done very well. My wife and I are wealthy now because of the stock market. I'm going to give them $1 million when I pass away. So, uh, but it's going to be for research, and it's going to be for you guys, the young guys, girls and guys, to do research. So anyway, so Yanis, how are you doing these days?
I actually just got back from Malpelo with Sandra.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was there. So it was my first time out there. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Did you go to El Monstro,
Mhm.
the
We did,
seafowl?
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think I'll add to your hammerhead stories in that one of the things I've been trying to do has been also to study these social groups of hammerheads with sort of our latest technology. And for example, where Peter was using free diving, I'm not a very good free diver. So now I use closed circuit rebreathers that have no bubbles. But for the same things Peter was talking about, they don't like bubbles. So I have a $10,000 piece of diving equipment on my back to go and sit down on the rocks. One of the other things we've been trying to do has been to put cameras onto hammerheads to study their behaviors within the school to get like a view of a
Yeah.
shark's view. But they've been very, very hard to do. And we've made very, very slow progress on this topic. So the progress you made, when was that study? Back in the 80s, I think you did a lot of that. We really haven't advanced too much since then. And mostly because it's a very challenging species to work with. You can find them in large numbers. Don was very right about that and about highlighting hammerheads, but working with them is very difficult. They're very hard to catch, much harder than other species. They just don't respond to attractants like other shark species do. So a lot of challenges, but I agree with Pete that they're probably one of the most fascinating questions in sort of animal behavior is the hammerhead schools, and probably one of them. I mean, it's hard to think of something more impressive than when you see a hammerhead school of hundreds to perhaps thousand animals.
And to add to Yanis, when we first were studying them, we dragged bait in the schools, and we never could get them to eat anything. They're thinking about sex,
They
not
don't. They're
food.
very hard to catch.
Yeah, and they're hard to catch because they leave the seamount and they go offshore to feed, and so to catch them, in a sense, you got to have your bait right when they leave or in the evening. So we've had a hard time, just as Yanis has, catching them and tagging them, and um, yeah, it's and they also. So one of the behaviors they do is what I call corkscrew swim, do a full circle with a full twist, a full flip with a back flip with a twist, and then they will hit another terms. It's used to force subordinates to the end. But if you got a camera on one of these critters, that's going to be tough on that camera when they do that, you know. But it's so when I was working, I used the first underwater camera that was mobile, and what it was composed of was a big deck and a big camera and a camera on top of it. And Elwood Gates built a beautiful housing for it, but it weighed like maybe 50 pounds. So I go down with this huge thing and be at the edge of the school, and I get down 80 feet, maybe 90 feet, and I would be down there for a couple minutes. I ended up being probably the best fit guy around after doing that all the time. But now they have GoPros, and they have very small cameras, it's. I think what Yanis is doing, and I did it myself. Don Nelson was very inspired with technologies. He really knew technologies well. You use these technologies, and you can answer new questions, and as well as analytical techniques. Some of the analytical techniques that Yanis has used, such as affinity indices, are very good. I didn't have that when I did studies of white sharks at a study at Año Nuevo Island. I did it in my own way, but I didn't have an index like that. So, and I think you can be really great. So I would say that I'm half biologist, half electronic engineer, and half geophysicist. I think when you combine, when I was at Scripps, I used to go to a group called the Foundation for Ocean Research, and John Isaacs, he was the smartest guy at Scripps, but he didn't have a PhD. There were 2,000 PhDs there, the smartest guy, and he had a group of engineers, and they would have to develop something and use it to get some information. It was very difficult because it's one thing that develops it, but another thing to actually implement it. And so I used to go to these meetings once a week, and the engineers, I loved them. They knew everything. They knew all the mathematics. They knew all the physics. They knew, but they weren't. The scientists were more thinkers. We may not know. I used trigonometry with white sharks, and I learned it because when I did it, I didn't do it in school, but these guys knew everything. So I learned so much from them, and Don Nelson's technician Jim McKibben, how to build things, and use them. Now you don't have to build them. That's great. You can get them built for you, and you can concentrate on using them, and that's what people do now. Now, what I like about Yanis, let me just say, is he doesn't just tag animals. He also does experiments. He did a wonderful experiment showing that hammerhead sharks detect magnetic fields. He developed a pH sensor one time, many years, a master's degree, and he's used all these affinity indices. So, here's a guy like myself that combines different fields, and that's the way to move your field farther. Here I am, very complimentary.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, we have a really good example of that, combining things. Well, I have a golden question for all these senior sharks. But first, I want to ask, have you seen the documentary Shark Whisperer?
I don't ever watch those things, but
I saw it yesterday.
Ah,
made a lot of them, but I don't watch them.
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, I'm going to explain it a little bit. It's about Ocean Ramsey, that is a conservationist and marine biologist from Hawaii, and that she's always like proving the good image of sharks by being really near to them, taking photos and posting them on social media. The
So
thing
it's a
is,
funny thing. I started doing that right after Jaws. And I went, Don Nelson said to me, how are you going to go here and talk about the behavior of white sharks and how they have complex behavior when everybody thinks they're a stupid, mindless feeding machine? And
yeah.
documentary after documentary, I did to try to dispel people of the fear of sharks. But the problem, the white shark sometimes is a nasty character. Let me just say, I was on Barb Block's boat. You know, it was a white shark. It moved to the one side. It was a seal. So it came over. I said, get that seal. Seal gets to the other side of the boat. Gets to the other side of the boat. And Barb's, and we're putting a little bit of fish to get the shark feeding. And suddenly it goes, whoa! On the transom of the boat, right out of Jaws, you know. And Taylor Chapman went up and patted him. You gotta watch out for these guys. The white shark is a scary, scary dude. I'll just tell you that. But others aren't. So, and the others, a lot of them, the ones that Yanis deals with, have a display, an agonistic display. They get frightened, and they bite because they're frightened. And if you know that, you can stay at a distance and be pretty safe. It's you know that some of the attacks are due to that. Another is that when we kick, I'd be at the seamount, and these silky sharks would get behind me. And I thought, they're just sneaky bastards. Those guys, sneaky. And then I realized, having studied sound, that if I stopped kicking, they would go away, which they did. And so attacks, let's say in Florida, a lot of them have to do with biting their legs because people are creating particle displacements that the sharks think it's a prey, dinner. So anyway.
Well, actually, Ocean Ramsey swam with white sharks. Actually, one of them is the blue, that is the like the biggest white shark ever. And I want to talk about that. What do you think that sometimes these kind of things sends the wrong message about safety and behavior, or what do you think of this kind of contact-based advocacy about shark conservation?
Well, you know,
Well,
so I was in a department called it was called Fisheries, Marine and Conservation, and I've always thought myself as really a non-conservation to some extent because I think the whole field of conservation is a little naive because things come and go. They always have. Some become extinct. Some radiate. In fact, writing a book on sharks, I wrote a whole chapter on their evolutionary history. And there were periods when we were struck by a meteor, and almost all of them died out except for one species, and it radiated. So, and then they think they don't want the Earth to warm, and they don't want the climate to change. It's always changed, and so and the fact that they kind of think they're going to stop it changing. You know, I mean, this whole thing against cars. Turns out that temperatures on the Earth increased after carbon dioxide, before carbon dioxide concentration, more recent studies. So, but then again, you know, the challenge, and Yanis can talk more about it, is managing populations. You know, it's don't wipe them out. And management's pretty good on the east coast of America right now. They have to do every year a population assessment based on what's caught, and if and so and I don't know, like Hawaii, Yanis, are your populations stable, or are they decreasing, or what says you?
I'm not sure about Hawaii. I'll let Mariana answer. I think she was about to say something, and I'll go afterwards.
When I saw this documentary, and what I think it's that and about this what I say, like what Ocean Ramsey is doing, um, it changed the perception of sharks. That's a good point. Yeah, like because yeah, sometimes it was like man eaters, everyone like let's kill sharks because they are going to kill us and things like that. So it changed that, and I think that's good. But what I don't think it's good, or what I don't like about her practices, it's like touching sharks all the time, like petting and things like that. And I think that's really, really dangerous because a lot of people, and I have met random people traveling or where I live, and they ask me like, "Ah, yeah, but if I encounter shark, I only do like this, no, like this girl that it's in Instagram." And I was like, "No, like you need to know, like." She's like telling the world that it's so easy that you can just jump with a white shark and just do like this, And I think it's dangerous to say that to the world. Let's not talk about touching sharks and maybe like diseases, things like that. I'm not a fan about touching wild animals. That's another point, but I think it's dangerous, the message that she's also sending to the world.
So
I think it is a double-edged sword because it does for sure. Seeing people swimming with sharks, big sharks, does help get rid of the myth of them being monsters, and we're seeing that. But we're also starting to see the sort of balance swing the other way, and in terms of people getting this impression that these animals are harmless, and they're not. They're predators. The chance of them hurting a human is very low, but it's not zero. And again, it's a predator; it doesn't care about your feelings, and they do, and sometimes will bite humans. And I think we're again seeing examples of that in some places, unfortunately, where humans are becoming too compliant around these animals. Again, acting like there's no threat at all, and I think we've seen some recent examples of where that has gone catastrophically wrong. So at the end of the day,
Dennis, you would be talking about tiger sharks.
no, I was thinking, well, there's a few different species that I think that we're seeing this approach with you can see it in a lot of beachgoers, for example, when there's sharks in the water. There's very little response to these animals, and it's good that we've gone to this stage where you don't need to panic because there's a shark in the water. But we're seeing other locations where I think the compliance and the comfort around the animals is getting too much. So in Israel, for example, where they had this large aggregation of dusky sharks, and you were having people hand feeding sharks, and it's just bathing in the water, hand feeding the sharks, and that had been going on for a few years, and they recently just had unfortunately a fatal attack. So it just goes to show you've got to treat these animals for what they are and respect them for what they are, which is predators. Again, they are, if you compare them to terrestrial predators, it's a very different situation. They're much less dangerous than terrestrial predators. You would never go and hang around with bears or lions, and you just wouldn't do that. Whereas you can do that with a shark and probably get away with it. But it doesn't necessarily mean you always should, because again, it doesn't mean you always will get away with it, and we have to keep that in mind.
So when I was at Miami, I was told, get up in a helicopter, and they would go along the beach there. There were sharks everywhere where the people were. I mean, they're swimming among them. Now, they're nurse sharks. A lot of them are not going to be a danger. But a lot of the attacks occur when somebody gets too close to a shark. The shark's doing this agonistic display, and they get bitten. In fact, many years ago, the whole idea that they had an agonistic display was a surgeon had noted that a child had 130 or 140 stitches and no flesh removed. So that type of agonistic attack, and that's particularly where Janus is a gray reef shark that will show that if you get closer. And lemon shark, I've noticed lemon sharks doing it. And then, of course, you're kicking with your net attracts the sharks, and so. But when you start feeding them, then now that's a different thing. That can, they can bite you because they're hunger motivated. No, Yanis, you're right. It's a double-edged sword.
Double-edged. Well, this is the end, sadly. But thank you for, like I said, to our gods of the ocean, to our ocean advocates from Morocco, Mary. Thank you to you
Thank you.
to also.
For me, it's been a delight to see Yanis. It's really, last time I saw him was at a scientific meeting.
Good to see you too, Pete.
Yeah, and he looks like he's conquering the world for us.
Conquering the world for us.
Okay.
And I saw you as a shark champion on Instagram, actually.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was for SharkCon. I did get an award, a belt.
That's great.
Congrats, congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And well, this is the first English session because I want to keep this English session of Shark Convention, and it's like a dream come true because as you saw today, this is science not just about facts but about purpose. So,
Gabriela, where did you learn how to speak English? You speak it beautifully.
oh, thank you. Actually, that's a funny story because I learned English first with movies and with songs, and then I started like professionally with what is the name in English? With an alliance here in Barranquilla called the Cultural Center Colombo Americano. So I started when I was like 8, 9 years old,
Boy.
and I like literally finished my English class like the last month. So
Yanis and I know a scientist. His name is Mauricio Hoyos.
I know him.
Yeah, he speaks English beautifully. He also learned it by looking at movies. He loves to look at movies, English movies. So that's a good way to learn the language.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to talk with you. I'm going to have to head out, and I'm glad I was finally able, because I couldn't get into your Spanish.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, bye. And for those who are here, the followers, this version of Shark Convention is in collab with the Mexican organizations Saving Our Sharks and Desmitificando Tiburones, and also in the agenda of the Sharks National Month. That it's a way that both organizations raise awareness between local people, and right now in an international way about the good image of sharks. So thank you very much, and remember our superpower.
I said about Yanis that he's going to conquer the world. You're going to conquer the world. Good to talk.
Remember our superpower: information and technology. Thank you, our senior sharks. Thank you, our junior shark. And
thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.